The Yangmun years were the 4 most chaotic years in the world of martial arts after the death of the first emperor. In the Jiangxi Castle, located in the province of Nanchang, lies the Martial Arts Alliance. There, the leader of the indestructible Divine Sword Martial Arts Alliance, Beek, speaks to his gathered brothers about finding justice and exterminating the demons that haunt them. Hoping to return to the peaceful life they once had, they have gathered for the first time in martial arts history to confront a common enemy whose strength surpasses any other throughout history. Although individually they cannot even scratch their enemy, the reality is that together they can create great strength. Thus, they will be able to face the so-called Great Star Killer, who transcends all men of the past, present, and future. After delivering an incredible motivational speech that ignites the fire in the hearts of all present, Lejeune begins to explain the true reason they are there. That morning, each of them received small blue, green, and red flags. Each flag was created with its own meaning to devise a plan against the enemy, building an inescapable network. The blue flag means that a light poison has been sprayed in the area, and only second-rank martial artists can enter the region. On the other hand, the green flag means that no martial artist below the first rank should come within a distance of 3 meters until the flag is collected. Finally, the red or scarlet flag signifies an incurable poison. If one sees that flag, no matter if they are a higher-ranking martial artist, no one should approach within at least 300 meters. As the soldiers begin to sweat with nervousness and terror upon realizing the true meaning of what is to come, Lejeune notices it and continues his speech, impassive. He tells them that even on the brink of death, poisoned to the core, they must use their last energies to plant the corresponding flag in that place, thereby saving hundreds of their comrades' lives. Otherwise, it will be impossible to promise a future, a peaceful world for martial arts. Before the martial artists become even paler with terror, the speech is interrupted as someone throws an object at Lejeune from behind the crowd. Everyone is stunned until they realize that the scarlet flag was thrown at him. Once they recover from their shock and see who it is, they notice that the culprit is none other than the poison dragon, Jagan Jin, a young man with short hair and a cold snow-like gaze. Upon seeing him there, many of them begin to insult him because nobody understands how he dares to show up in that place, until they realize that to reach that place, he must have passed through the 3rd and 4th gates, which means he single-handedly destroyed an army of martial artists without any help. Noticing this, they fall silent in astonishment, but some of them still start unsheathing their weapons, and Lejeune seems eager to join them. Jagan Jin is known as the best assassin in the entire martial world, with a stained record and earning the hatred of people. That's why Lejeune managed to unite 10,000 people through the Martial Arts Alliance with the sole purpose of killing him. And solely because they have joined to defeat Jagan Jin, he promises that none of those present will escape with their lives. Some time ago, on a beautiful night in the middle of a cabin, Jagan Jin's family is treacherously attacked by an enemy of one of their relatives. While the whole family is sleeping, his father tries to leave their austere house but fails to cross the threshold of the door, which falls to the ground, his face deformed and his life force completely lost. This noise wakes up young Yagang, who starts feeling dizzy and doesn't understand what is happening. He tries to wake up his mother, who is sleeping beside him at that moment, but she doesn't respond. Now fully awake, he begins to feel the pain in his body more fiercely and makes every effort to wake up his mother. But when she finally opens her eyes, despair is visible on her face because she has also been infected by the poison. Veins start appearing on her face and a foamy, almost rabid substance emerges from her mouth. Then Yagang looks around and realizes that this can only be the work of centipede venom. Observing his bed and clothes, he notices that they are surrounded by dozens of centipedes that continue to bite them, one after another. Amid cries of pain and desperation, the young boy screams for help from his mother, but she has already passed away seconds ago. Yagang realizes that there is no escape, that he will lose his life there, at such a young age and in that place, after witnessing his mother's death. That's why, fueled by the burning fury in his body and after being attacked by 5 centipedes at the same time, Yagang starts biting the centipedes, one by one. He eats them so they won't harm him anymore as a sort of revenge for his parents. But his life is already lost, or so he thought, because before closing his eyes forever, Yagang's grandfather appears in the house, using a healing fire pill to cure the child's venom and save his life. But behind him comes a man named Meng, who only laughs at the scene and warns Yagang that if he had listened to his words in the beginning, this would never have happened, as his stubbornness led to the elimination of all the members of his innocent family. But firm in his convictions, the old man declares that his faction, the White Flower from the School of Medicine, will not yield to the Poison faction, which spends its time poisoning and killing people. But amidst laughter, the man replies that there is no point in fighting anymore since his entire family has lost their lives. Because even if he tries to save his grandson's life, the poison faction has placed dozens of red centipedes in his room. The most venomous centipede of all. Amid tears, the elderly man understands that there is truly nothing he can do about it, so he leaves the house carrying Jin in his arms, considering him dead. And outside the cabin, not only is this evil man present, but the entire poison faction is there as well. Just when he is about to give up, Jin starts moving and even utters the word grandfather. Everyone is surprised that the young boy has survived the venom of the red centipede for so long. But it only means that he will soon lose his life, and his suffering will only grow greater. The leader of the poison faction continues laughing, but Jin manages to crawl towards him and thrusts the shell of the red centipede into his foot, passing on its venom, a venom for which there seems to be no antidote. Enraged by this, Mang delivers a powerful punch to the child, but the old man manages to intervene and absorb all the impact of the blow. Meanwhile, desperate to save his life, the leader of the poison faction asks his subordinates to cut off the infected leg with a sword, and they comply. However, the distraction caused by that scene is seized by Jin and his grandfather to escape from the place. Taking shelter from the rain and their enemies inside the trunk of a hollow tree, the old man lays his grandson down, only to see him spit out another shell of a red centipede. He is surprised and understands why Jin has survived until now, as it is said that if someone eats the venom sac of the poison master, they can overcome the venom. Joyful that his grandson is still alive, the old man uses his last bit of energy to tell Jin that he must fight for his life, and that his future is uncertain. Finally, the poison faction arrives at the place where these relatives had hidden, but by then, the old man has already lost his life due to the blow from the faction leader. However, Jin is still alive, and it seems that the leader has plans for him, though we can't say they seem pleasant. After a few hours, young Jin finally wakes up, only to realize that he is in a strange room and is bound hand and foot to a large board. In desperation, he tries to find some answers and finds the leader of the poison faction in front of him. He attempts to ask about his grandfather, but the man only mocks him and mentions the old man's unfortunate fate. Despite using all his energy to escape, his grandfather failed and died from the blow. But before Jin can even begin to comprehend what they are telling him, the scene turns into an even worse nightmare. The leader mentions that initially, he wanted to take the life of the young boy responsible for his leg being amputated. However, after thinking it over, he decided not to waste a body like Jin's, someone who had survived the venom of the red centipede and demonstrated immunity to the poison. At that moment, he decided to use the child as a guinea pig, using his body as a testing ground to push the limits and see how much the venom can or cannot withstand. With that said, he places a black centipede on Jin, which is not as venomous as the red one but can still cause death to some beings. Seeing the creature on his body, Jin begins to squirm in desperation, and the leader hits him to make him stop. After a few minutes, the child faints. The next day, the leader appears in the room and confesses that he was very harsh with Jin the previous day, so now he offers him something to drink. He tells him that what he's giving him to drink is the memory potion, a potion that can cure memory loss and heal mental power. After drinking the concoction, Jin asks why he has given him that, hoping it's out of mercy, but he is mistaken. The true reason is that the leader needs the child to stop fainting because all it does is delay his experiments. However, now that he has taken the potion, he should stay awake longer, making his body easier to experiment on and observe his reactions. Then Jin starts squirming again, and the leader confesses that he also mixed pufferfish venom with the potion, in a dose large enough to kill 10 people. For weeks or even months, the leader continued giving Jin all kinds of poisons, from the simplest to the most venomous, and he also continued forcing him to drink the memory potion, preventing the boy from fainting, to observe all his reactions. This went on for a long time, and our protagonist had to endure each and every one of the effects. He was in the 7th circle of hell. One day, the leader injected the venom of a double-edged spider, which closed the boy's airways until he, for the first time, begged for his life. Although initially the leader claimed that he wouldn't save him, as it is his fault that he is now disabled, he decided to do so, not out of pity but to keep him alive even longer and prolong his revenge. Thus, he used his own energy to enter the boy's body, flow through his white cells, and push the venom out through Jin's little finger, saving his life. While continuing to observe the effects on the boy, a martial artist appears at the leader's door to inform him that they need him urgently because there is an inspection by the Murim Federation. The leader then heads to the inspection, wondering why Baek Lejung, the mediator of the Murim alliances, would go there himself. As he approaches the cabin, he begins to smell a strange stench, a faint smell of poison and fish that makes him think something is happening inside. Despite that, he opens the door confidently, and, as he suspected, something is indeed happening. At that moment, the Swesamu snake lunges at the man, but fortunately, he manages to stop it just in time with his hands, avoiding being bitten by the reptile. Although the initial scare is overcome, he starts to wonder how the snake escaped its enclosure. But as soon as he sets foot inside the cabin, he finds that all the bugs and animals that were kept to extract their venom are now out of their places and running around everywhere. But that's not all, because Ya-Gang is no longer there, which means that in the short time the leader was absent, the boy managed to escape, and in his escape, released all the animals to cause trouble. However, it's impossible for Ya-Gang, in his decrepit state, to have been able to escape. Besides, due to all his wounds, he must have left some traces during his escape, yet there was no blood anywhere. Despite searching near the main door, the leader finds no signs that he left through there. Then the idea comes to him that maybe he didn't flee but simply found a hiding place. Thus, he begins to search throughout the cabin for any place where Ya-Gang could hide. After a while, he finds it. In the small space where the leader discarded the leftover venom, there was a giant red stain, indicating unequivocally that Ya-Gang had hidden there. Then, with laughter because he considers the boy to be too stupid, he squats down to open the small door and find his victim. However, he is surprised by a sharp attack that causes a small and superficial wound on his cheek. Although at first, he thinks he was attacked by a bamboo leaf, within seconds he starts feeling the effect of the poison, which clouds his vision and distorts all his senses. Then he realizes that he is not a victim of just one poison, because those symptoms indicate that not only two but several poisons have been mixed together. Desperate, the leader starts thinking that he needs to find the cure, so he wants to approach the boy. But he is surprised to see that Ya-Gang is not behind the small door but appears behind him, coming out of his hiding place in the snake basket. Ya-Gang calmly removes a snake that was biting his arm and begins to walk out the door, with no intention of quickly ending his tormentor's life. Meanwhile, upon seeing Ya-Gang's body, the leader realizes that the boy managed to create that deadly poison using the venom that came out of the acupuncture points in one of his experiments. In this way, Ya-Gang leaves, leaving the leader to die, suffering until his last moments of life. Once outside, the boy manages to venture into the forest and, still exhausted and broken from all the things he had to endure, he bursts into tears knowing that he finally defeated and took the life of the leader of the Poison faction, the main enemy of the White Flower faction. And with that, he avenged the deaths of his grandfather and his parents, although he can never have them back. However, now that this nightmare is over, he doesn't know how to continue with his life. But as he tries to catch his breath, he overhears two subordinates of the Poison faction conversing with each other. Thus, he learns that Lejung is there because supposedly someone reported the Poison faction, and he must investigate them. Despite this, the subordinates are not entirely worried because there are rumors that the leader has a plan to face whatever comes. Upon hearing about the Murim alliance, Ya-Gang remembers his grandfather's words saying that the alliance is a group of strong and righteous warriors who help all sects, big and small, equitably. Because of this, an astonishing plan comes to the boy's mind, to meet the person coming from the alliance and inform them about what happened with the White Flower faction and what the leader of the Poison faction did to him. Secretly, Ya-Gang manages to infiltrate the meeting where Lejung is present and looks at him in astonishment, with hopeful eyes. To him, Lejung is the main master who has promoted justice for decades after appearing in Gangheo. While the Poison sect kneels before the main master, Ya-Gang believes that if anyone is capable of eradicating the evil from that faction, it is only Lejung. After the grand group greeting to the Grand Master, Ya-Gang manages to hide in a room where Lejung and a leader of the Poison sect also enter seconds later. Despite his excitement to speak to the Grand Master, Ya-Gang understands that they are in the middle of a very serious conversation and decides to stay in the shadows until the right moment arises. He then overhears them speaking highly of the Poison sect, about how well trained they are and the great benefits they would achieve by joining them. Although Lejung also desires that, he is aware that they are just a group on the UNNAM border, so the alliance is still in doubt. Then the faction leader starts complaining, saying that they have given everything and have shown great ability, so he doesn't understand why the alliance is in doubt. Upon hearing this, Lejung becomes even more serious and confesses to him that someone from the UNNAM alliance approached him, claiming to be the sole survivor of a sect that was annihilated by the Poison sect, someone who seems to be from the King's Medicine sect. Ya-Gang continues to strain his ears and then learns that the White Flower sect is not the only one suffering attacks from the Poison sect. Now more than ever, he wants to step out of the shadows to share his own experience and gain Lejung's support. However, the conversation among the adults continues, and Ya-Gang is surprised to hear the faction leader confess that subjugating the medical sects has not gone as well as they had hoped. Instead of Lejung scolding or addressing that confession, he only challenges him because he believes they are making excuses. He then asks what they plan to do next, to which the leader responds that they intend to send the survivors to the underground tunnels, a place controlled by the Poison sect, making it impossible for them to escape. After discussing the new plans, the leader asks Lejung about the leak, and Lejung, unfazed, asserts that it has already been eliminated to avoid further problems. Before leaving, he warns that sects with disputes will be penalized when examined by the Alliance, so he advises him to resolve that issue quickly for the next time the Alliance presents itself. At that moment, Ya-Gang finally realizes what is really happening and understands that the Alliance and the Poison sect are allies. Contrary to what he expected, the Alliance not only does not penalize the Poison sect but also helps and advises them. Therefore, it would be pointless to inform anyone in the Alliance about what happened to the White Flower sect since they themselves are involved in the killing and elimination of the medical sects. When he finally discovers this, he stifles a scream, which Lejung seems to hear as he attacks the wooden pillar behind which our protagonist is hiding with his sword, but fortunately, he does not harm him and believes he has been mistaken. After that, he leaves the room, and Ya-Gang takes advantage of the moment to do the same. Thus, in the next few minutes, he gathers all the information he obtained from that conversation and connects the dots to fully understand what is happening. The deaths of his parents, his grandfather, and all the people from the affected sects not only stain the hands of the Poison sect but also the Alliance. They are all the same. They are all murderous bastards. He then remembers his grandfather's last words before losing his life and vows to survive and grow stronger to obtain the revenge his family deserves. Meanwhile, in the Grand Hall, a toast is being made to Lejung's arrival and the increasingly close union between the Poison sect and the Alliance. But then the celebration is interrupted by a messenger bringing bad news. The man secretly informs the faction leader about what has happened, and when Lejung sees this, he believes that something terrible has occurred. But the leader reassures him that it's nothing. Then, away from Lejung, he speaks more openly with his subordinates, and they tell him that the old faction leader, the one who followed him in command, has been found dead in his cabin, apparently due to poisoning. Although the subordinates believe it could have been an accident and that he took his own life accidentally, the leader doesn't believe that because the old man experimented with poisons his whole life. He then asks what happened to the child he used as a guinea pig, and upon learning that he is not in the room, he starts to think that maybe he was the one who poisoned him. Whether that is true or not, they cannot let anyone from the White Flower sect escape alive, as it could bring them trouble. He notifies them that they must search every corner of the place and bring his body back, whether he is alive or dead. Ya-Gang continues to infiltrate the Poison sect, and from his hiding spot in the bushes, he manages to observe how the members of the King's Medicine sect are being massed into the tunnels. At one point, an elderly man's legs give out, and he falls to the ground. One of the guards watching over them harshly strikes him to get him back in line. The man's family members rush to help him, pleading for mercy and empathy, but it only worsens the situation. The guard becomes enraged and swears to take the man's life. However, he is stopped by another guard who tells him not to lose control. Contrary to what one might expect, this guard is even worse and claims that the word mercy is only used by the weak, and he despises the weak. With that, he slashes the face of the elderly man's son with his sword, stating that if it weren't for the orders to take them to the tunnel, he would have killed them long ago. This demonstrates that within this faction, one member is more malevolent and sadistic than the other. Meanwhile, Ya-Gang takes advantage of this distraction to blend into the line and get onto the cart carrying the members of the Medicine sect. Although the guards from the Poison sect don't notice him, the Medicine sect guards realize that this unfamiliar child is not one of their own. Ya-Gang then recounts everything that has happened, that he is part of the White Flower sect, a faction also targeted by the Poison sect, that they used his body as a guinea pig to test poisons, and he managed to escape by killing his captor. Initially, everyone is surprised and proud that the child overcame all these obstacles. However, they assure him that the cart they are on is far from being an escape, and if he were to try to kill the guards, it would be almost impossible as they are highly skilled. Furthermore, they cannot help him either because they have lost a significant amount of internal energy due to Sangong's poison. But then Ya-Gang claims that he possesses a poison that could defeat the poison sect's Jidok faction. However, the medicine sect members assert that it's impossible because Jidok is a sect specializing in poison, and they can cure anything thrown at them. To demonstrate what he is talking about, Ya-Gang recounts how he defeated his captor with that poison. He then bites his finger, causing a cut from which a thick, whitish liquid oozes out. Just by its appearance, the medicine sect members can confirm that it is a pure toxin, a highly toxic poison. At that moment, everyone starts to believe the boy's words, but they don't understand how he can carry that poison in his body. Ya-Gang explains that he ate all the centipedes they put on his body and survived all the poisons they tested on him. As a result, yin energy started to gather in his danchan, that poison in the vital parts of his body. Since then, the poison that accumulates in his danchan can exit through his vital point located on his pinky finger. Despite this new information, not everyone is willing to follow our protagonist's plan as it has a high margin of error. One of the women present opposes their plan, fearing a horrible death if they fail, and many of those around her support her words. However, Ya-Gang asserts that there is no point in living much longer if they are going to live like beasts, and everyone knows that life in the mines is not a good one. With the boy's words, many gather their courage and decide to carry out the plan, asking him to lead them as they still have some energy left and are facing few enemies. Before organizing any uprising, the man with the facial cut introduces himself as Yangmun, the vice master of the king's medicine sect. He thanks Ya-Gang for opening their eyes to the true face of the alliance. Then, as they start to plan the attack, they are stopped by martial artists who claim that the sect's headmaster orders the carriage to return to the sect. This surprises, and not in a good way, our protagonist and his new companion. The sudden announcement of returning to the sect surprises everyone, and no one fully understands what is really happening. Then, one of the messages informs everyone there that they have just learned about the death of Ya-Gang's captor, and the victim used as a guinea pig is not present. Therefore, there is a high possibility that he has infiltrated and might even be on the same carriage. For this reason, they should return to the sect to resolve this issue before causing further complications for the alliance. However, doubts begin to arise among everyone because they are on a very narrow path, and reversing or turning the entire carriage with the horses is a highly dangerous decision that could bring them significant trouble and worsen things for the alliance. But then, the leader of the group, who was the one who cut Yang's face, comes up with a brilliant idea that would solve all the problems. If they were supposed to bring 11 people, they should simply count that there are 11 people on the carriage, as easy as that. Upon being discovered, Ya-Gang and the prisoners start trembling as they don't know how they can escape from that situation. The guards begin to count and realize that there are not 11, but 12 people on the carriage. Then, a desperate man betrays Ya-Gang without thinking and starts shouting that the boy infiltrated the carriage without them noticing. And by the time they realized, it was already too late. Everyone is surprised by the quick betrayal, but the situation becomes even darker when the group leader cuts the informant into two parts, separating his head from the rest of his body. He starts laughing because this is the reason he needed to do what he had been wanting to do so badly, kill them all, one by one, instead of taking them to the tunnels. However, despite the fear in the situation, everyone rebels against their captors and begins to attack them, as they have no other choice. Thus, some members of the poison sect are injured while others from the medicine sect suffer the same fate. It's a normal fight until one of the Jidok starts spitting blood because he has been severely injured by Yang. This surprises the group leader greatly, who finally realizes, in shock, that Yang used a piece of porcelain from the carriage as a weapon. But a simple injury with a piece of porcelain couldn't cause such a grave wound, so the only option is that they used poison. Knowing this, the group leader decides, slyly, to fight from a distance to avoid attacks with poison, and the members of the medicine sect claim that he won't be able to win that way. But then the leader swings his sword, using his kai to make an even longer and more powerful attack, and he cuts one of the medicine sect members in half. While everyone is dumbfounded by the leader's power, Ya-Gang seizes the distraction to attack him from behind and put an end to it once and for all. We see then that the plan, with more casualties than expected, had worked perfectly to distract the leader long enough for Ya-Gang to approach from behind and use the poisoned weapon on his neck. Or so it seemed, because despite attacking the leader, he doesn't even flinch and only manages to laugh at having ruined his plan, as his tough skin couldn't be pierced so easily. With that said, he turns around and quickly destroys the boy by plunging his gigantic sword into Ya-Gang's stomach, much to the surprise of everyone present, witnessing the destruction of their plan. While the leader mocks the boy's pitiful performance, Ya-Gang grabs the sword with his hands, sobbing, and repeats to himself that he cannot lose his life there because the lives of everyone else depend on him. But on the ground, freshly stabbed with such a massive sword, there isn't much he can really do. The leader then removes the sword from our protagonist's body and, as he usually does, displaying his bloodthirsty personality, he maliciously and gleefully licks the sword. Seeing how coldly the man stabbed a mere child, all the members of the sect unite to attack together, driven by fury and resentment against their captor. However, in a single motion, using the same Kai technique on his sword but at higher levels, the leader obliterates all the members of the medicine sect, except for Yang, who remains alive but has lost one of his limbs. As the leader approaches him to finally finish everyone off, he hears Yang counting to 10 behind him and sees the boy starting to rise and move towards him. Surprised by the child's level of willpower and survival instinct, just like Yang, they both are left speechless. But the leader directs his path towards the young boy to end him once and for all. However, at that moment, he starts spitting blood and, surprised, wonders how that could have happened. Yang confesses that he noticed his fondness for licking the sword, so he took advantage of the stab to coat the blade with poison from his pinky finger. Thus, when the leader licked the sword, he consumed a large amount of an extremely toxic poison. And now, crawling with his last remaining strength and covered in blood, he tries to pursue Yang, but it's in vain. While begging for his life, Yang attacks him from behind and finally kills him. Afterwards, Yang faints, and when he opens his eyes again, he finds himself next to Yang, on a horse, with his wounds already bandaged. The boy feels guilty for the deaths of all the members of the medicine sect, but Yang reassures him, saying that going to the tunnels would have been even worse. With these words, Yang hands the reins to Yang and jumps off the horse, saying that he will stay behind to delay anyone who might be chasing them. Amid tears, Yang promises himself that for the rest of his life, he will train to become stronger every day, and defeat the Poison Jidok faction once and for all. As Yang had anticipated, a backup group from the Poison faction headed to the scene only to find everyone dead, including the leader. Everyone except the hostage, Yang. When this news reaches the faction leader, he is dumbfounded to learn that the group leader died and goes mad, stating that there is no way this information should reach Lejun. However, at that moment, Lejun himself appears, having heard everything, and asserts that this situation is not to his liking at all, so he will return home the next day. Seeing that all their efforts are going to waste, the Jidok leader begins to swear that they will resolve the problem, but it yields no results. Lejun affirms that all the factions within the Federation represent a solid rock and that they have no use for a crumbling stone that crumbles under the slightest pressure, so aligning with the Poison sect is no longer of any use to them. However, he will give them one last chance, which is more of a test than an opportunity, because if they fail again in finding the hostage, the Jidok faction will be destroyed forever. Faced with the terror of this happening, the leader approaches the captor Mang, who seems to have survived the poisoning by our protagonist, but barely, and despite receiving medical attention, he can hardly speak. There, he asks for information about the boy to know whom to look for specifically. A few weeks after this dark chapter in Yagang's life, the boy remains secluded in the forest, finding food as best he can and finishing the healing of his wounds. But he is tired of the solitude and knows that if he continues in that way, he will never become stronger. So he sets off for the second stage of his life and heads to a city. There, he talks to some people at a job and offers himself as a servant, claiming that all his family was attacked by bandits, and now he is alone and in need of food. These adults then begin to advise him on some houses that are looking for people. Later, Yagang asks about the Jidok sect, and the adults respond that they are a bit more restless than usual because they recently suffered an attack from the King's Medicine faction, who are trying to eliminate the Jidok once and for all. Upon hearing this, Yagang becomes furious at seeing the victim role that the Poison faction is constructing, just to justify the mobilization of the Medicine faction towards the tunnels, and for it to work because these city dwellers claim that the Medicine faction must be evil and deserving of their punishment. He also learns that there is someone from the White Flower clan among those being taken to Manhwa, the tunnels. Upon hearing that someone from his clan could be alive, he rushes to save them, believing that he is the only one capable of saving his sect. However, he abruptly stops when he considers that he might be walking into a trap, but there is still a slim chance, 1 in 10,000, that what he heard is true, so he hesitates about what to do next. Meanwhile, in Manhwa, the leader of the Jidok faction patiently waits for Yagang to fall into his trap and head to the tunnels to search for members of his clan. By his side is Meng, who has recovered from our protagonist's poison but has lost an eye in the prolonged battle against him. He eagerly anticipates the destruction of the boy who deprived him of his leg and eye. After a long while contemplating what to do in the current situation, Ya-Gang decides that he will go and verify if the rumors are true. Thus, he heads to Manhwa, the location of the tunnels, to take a quick look and see if he recognizes anyone. And indeed, in the distance, he recognizes 3 people from his clan, so he decides to approach. However, there are too many guards in the area, making it impossible for him to infiltrate without being noticed. So he devises a new plan. Not far, but not too close, he finds an old cabin that was used to store some tools, nothing useful, and, above all, nothing that could indicate the presence of people inside. He sets fire to that cabin to create a distraction, and his plan works perfectly as the guards and some workers start running desperately in search of water to put out the fire. Thus, Ya-Gang manages to sneak into the tunnels, where his former acquaintances from the clan recognize him and rejoice that he is still alive, as they have heard rumors of his encounter with the Poison Clan. While the boy catches up with the people from his clan, the guards gather with Mang to report about the fire. Although they believe it was caused by some people burning hay nearby, and it spread enough to burn the cabin, Mang is certain that this is impossible, and that the fire was entirely accidental. With that said, he is confident that Ya-Gang was responsible, so he rushes to the tunnels, and as he expected, he finds the boy conversing with his acquaintances. Like never before, he wished to kill him right there, but after having suffered so much on his part, he decided to make him suffer even more, slowly. Meanwhile, the leader of the Jidok sect meets with the Wijong of Baekdam-hyung, and Meng, who happened to be heading towards that place, runs into them while they are conversing. The leader claims that he met with the leader of the Wijong sect to seek advice on their current situation, and he visited the place as a guest. Later, the leader of Wijong comments that he has realized that the Poison sect has recently taken action to join the alliance, but he asserts that greater movements lead to greater vulnerabilities. Although they initially allied themselves and supported General Li Beek, allowing the Poison sect to take over the Medicine sect. That was, at least, the original agreement. However, recently, those who follow the major movements of the Poison sect have begun to suspect something within the alliance and are trying to get to the bottom of their agreement, thus endangering the existence of said agreement. Because of that, the best solution proposed by the Wijong leader is to eliminate them. With the support of the other Poison sects, they claim that in this way, they can enter the alliance and even become part of the 4 major Poison sects. Although the leader of the Jidok sect is pleased with the deal, Mang strongly opposes it because destroying the sect and, therefore, the tunnels only means they are taking away his opportunity to personally eliminate Ya-Gang. In the mines, at that moment, a massive explosion occurs, causing a significant part of the tunnels to collapse, trapping all the slaves from the other factions and keeping them away from the tunnel exit. Upon learning about the plans to eliminate the tunnels, Mang rushes as fast as he can with his cane and his only leg towards the tunnels. However, he arrives too late and finds that a large part has already exploded and the tunnel ceiling has collapsed, presumably killing those who were inside, or so he believes. Thinking that Ya-Gang has lost his life crushed by the rocks, Mang goes insane because they took away from him the long-awaited opportunity to take revenge on the boy who caused him so much suffering since their encounter. On the other side of the mine, the trapped individuals wonder what the hell has happened and why they have been locked in there. As it is a mine shared by all the Poison sects, they can't believe that they all agreed to seal it at that moment. For his part, Ya-Gang thinks that maybe it's a trap to lock him up. But then he thinks more rationally and realizes that it doesn't make sense for them to have done all that just to trap him. So, the only reasonable explanation would be that it is related to Lejun. With less importance given to who carried out that action, everyone starts to panic because they don't know what to do. Being locked inside, they can't even seek external help. But Ya-Gang, the youngest among them, is the voice of reason and assures them that panicking won't help. They must take control of the situation. Although it's uncertain and they have no communication with the outside, they have tools, energy, and a significant number of people on their side of the tunnel. That's why the best option is to try to dig through the rocks and see if they can create a hole to escape. Astonished, everyone agrees that the child's words are true, and they decide to work until they see it completed because it's better to die trying than to sit and do nothing. However, the situation proves to be not as easy as they expected. With a lack of food and relying on a small light, the mining work through a path becomes much more difficult. Gradually, people start losing energy, and despite having made considerable progress in the initial stages, they are now hungry and exhausted, causing them to faint before they can finish the opening. While searching for a solution to the problems, Ya-Gang sneaks through a small hole in the tunnel and comes across a large water lake, which in that situation resembles an oasis. And not only is there water, but also moss, so our protagonist believes that will be enough to feed and give water to everyone there. However, when he takes the first sip, he realizes that the water is contaminated by the poison from the mines, making it impossible to consume. After a while, Ya-Gang sacrifices his ration of water and food for the others because, due to his special body, he can consume and drink the poisoned oasis. But that small portion of food is not enough, and everyone remains tired. To make matters worse, while they are digging, one of the poorly constructed pillars due to the lack of light collapses, rendering much of the work they had done meaningless as many of the rocks they had managed to lift fall again. Then, everyone sits down, defeated, waiting for death, as they have no energy or will to continue with it. Except for Ya-Gang, who approaches the mountain of rocks and starts the digging process again. Then an elder from his faction approaches to ensure that if he is going to fight to get out of there, he asks him for one last favor, to become the heir of the clan's secret techniques. Upon hearing this, everyone there asks the boy for the same thing because they want some essential knowledge from their family or clan to continue being passed down, and the only one who can do that is Ya-Gang, who will survive. Seeing the great responsibility that everyone is placing on a poor child, the elder from Ya-Gang's clan stops them and scolds them. However, the boy affirms that if he can, he will proudly carry on the knowledge. His life has ceased to be his own for a long time and has become part of all those who gave their lives for him. That's why his mission now is to survive everything that comes his way, become stronger each time, and completely destroy the poison faction of Jidok and all those responsible for locking them all in at that moment. After that grand speech, Ya-Gang spent the following days trying to memorize each and every technique that those trapped with him taught him. Kai cultivation, stride technique, assassination techniques, and even methods and techniques for medicine manufacturing. Despite his companions recommending him to rest because even he, with his child's body, and the vigor of that age, needs some rest, Ya-Gang always said that he didn't have time to rest because he needed to learn all the teachings they had for him. But something does manage to interrupt his learning. Mr. Gong, the elder from his clan, has reached the limit of his energy and is lying on the floor, about to pass on to a better world. But before departing, he wants to speak one last time with Ya-Gang. In his final words, he apologizes for not being able to protect him as he had promised, and despite his strength, he doesn't know if he can withstand such a hostile world. After making these declarations, Gong takes one last breath and passes on to the other world. While his companions mourn the loss, they recommend Ya-Gang to rest, this time, even if it's just to mourn his dear comrade. But the young boy has no time to waste and goes back to digging. On the other side of the tunnel, Mang is in a deplorable state, half drunk and bordering on madness. While he utters incoherent phrases one after another, he only laments not having eliminated Ya-Gang with his own hands. However, suddenly he starts feeling a slight vibration, which is reflected in the water that had spilled on the floor earlier. Then he understands that Ya-Gang is still alive and trying to escape from there. With this new information, Mang jumps for joy because he can finally have the revenge he desired so much, and his life regains meaning. As the days and weeks pass, the people inside the tunnel die one after another due to hunger until Ya-Gang becomes the only survivor. One winter, Mang approaches the tunnel, assuming that the work will take the boy about 5 years or more, and swearing that he will be waiting for him at the exit to take revenge. After uttering those words, he leaves. Meanwhile, months pass, years pass, and Ya-Gang continues to sustain himself with poison moss and water while he digs and memorizes each and every technique and knowledge that his companions passed on to him before they died. Loneliness was one of the toughest challenges he had to endure. And so, slowly but with effort and perseverance, one day Ya-Gang broke the last stone of the tunnel and managed to emerge into the open as an Asura. 8 years passed until the poor boy, who is no longer a child, finally saw the sunlight again. As Ya-Gang tries to rebuild his life after 8 long years of trying to escape the tunnel, the Jidok sect remains the same, or even more bloodthirsty than before. Continuing with their original plan, the sect's old leader, along with his subordinates, has killed, injured, and tied up a new medicinal sect. This is the 20th sect that has fallen into the bloody hands of Jidok. And now, in addition to exterminating them, what they seek is the secret arts manual of the Red Medicine sect. But they are not willing to give it up, and a woman confronts him, saying that they are just street killers. Upon hearing this word, the old leader becomes furious because it touches a sensitive nerve within him, and he strikes the woman until she falls to the ground. He only stops when one of his subordinates approaches to report that they have found the manual. The mission is completed, but they cannot leave loose ends, so the leader decides that they will take everyone from the medicinal sect with them. Once at the Jidok sect settlement, the old leader drinks until he is drunk, as it seems that the woman's words struck a chord within him. She said what he had already been thinking. When he decided to join the alliance and start destroying the medicinal factions, he believed that someday he could reach the position of his superiors, who ordered killings without a care because others took care of it. However, that never happened, and the leader remained as one of the alliance's assassins, feeling that they have taken advantage of him. So, his new plan is to take all the ancient techniques from the different factions they have defeated, to use them and become stronger every day. But as he continues drinking and pondering his plan, red smoke starts to fill the room, and he faints. After a few minutes, he wakes up to find that his entire skin is covered in giant eruptions, and he starts to panic. When he goes out to talk to a subordinate, he encounters dozens of bodies with the same eruptions, lifeless. Then he starts to think and realizes that these symptoms are the effects of mercury poisoning. The leader starts asking if the sect has any antidote for mercury poisoning, and some claim that there must be something left and run desperately to find it because many of them have also been poisoned. They will soon suffer the same fate as their companions. In the distance, Ya-Gang watches as his enemies begin to panic, and he is certain that his revenge has finally begun. After a few minutes, the guards appear with a few antidotes that don't exceed 7 doses. The leader urges them to each consume their antidote. When they ask what they will do with the other affected members of their faction, the leader simply states that they must first find him or the enemies to stop them before they continue attacking. Thus, once they have taken the antidote, the 7 members of the Jidok faction head into the forest, following the trail of red smoke coming from there. Upon arriving at the location, they encounter a thick curtain of red smoke that prevents them from seeing who is there, so the leader starts shouting, hoping their enemies will come out of hiding. But as the smoke dissipates a bit, they find only one boy in front of them, a young teenager. The leader asks why he is doing this to the poison faction, and our protagonist responds seriously that he is doing it for revenge. Upon hearing these words, the leader starts laughing hysterically, thinking it's a joke. However, Ya-Gang's cold gaze shows that there is no intention of joking there. Then the leader becomes enraged and sends his soldiers to attack him. Although Ya-Gang has a great history with poisons, he doesn't seem to be very skilled in hand-to-hand combat, as he manages to dodge some attacks but not all, and within a few seconds, he has several cuts on his face. Confident, the leader believes that the battle is won. However, in one move, Ya-Gang throws a liquid into the eyes of one of the guards, who falls writhing in pain on the ground. When the leader realizes it, all his subordinates are lying on the ground, suffering. Then the leader believes that the only way to defeat him is to do it himself, so he quickly approaches the boy to deliver his final blow. However, after being dodged, the leader falls to the ground, seemingly reaching the limits of his strength. Surprised by this, he thought the antidote he took would prevent the poison from entering his body. But then Ya-Gang tells him that what he was burning to produce that smoke was not only mercury but also green tea leaves. And the second rule one must know when taking an antidote is that if you mix it with green tea, the healing effect will decrease. When the leader is already on the ground, unable to move, Ya-Gang confesses that he recognizes his own weakness, so his plan was never to defeat him with his strength. He was only buying time for the poison to take effect. Between sobs and pleas, the leader claims that none of this is his fault, as he was only following orders from above, and he begs for the antidote to that poison, promising to help the medicinal sects. But Ya-Gang tells him that such an antidote doesn't exist, that he is immune to the poison, and that he spent 8 years locked in a mercury mine. Connecting all the dots, the leader realizes that he is face to face with Mang's victim. Having fulfilled his mission, Ya-Gang slowly walks away, leaving the old man suffering on the ground, and he assures that all members of the poison sect deserve heavenly punishment. But as he knows that won't happen, he will be the one to deliver that heavenly punishment. After defeating his enemies, Ya-Gang heads to the settlement of the Jidok poison sect and feels satisfied to see that he has eliminated all members of that sect, although his eyes, already cold from so much suffering, do not show it. He finally felt avenged for the deaths of his mother, father, grandfather, and the people in the mines. But destroying only the Jidok faction doesn't mean that everything is over. That was just a rotten group of people, and if they were able to thrive and inflict suffering on so many people without consequences, it's because someone else had their backs. Thinking about this, Ya-Gang enters one of the rooms to find a chest containing various documents. As he begins to read, he discovers that there is an agreement in which all the poison sects agreed, redundant as it may sound, and that the poison Lord Gok, Wijong, ordered the destruction of all the mines to ease the concerns of Baekhwacheol-geok. Upon reading that, Ya-Gang realizes that, indeed, as his companions had said 8 years earlier, the poison mines were shared by all factions of that sect, and it was the 3 major poison sects that carried out the plan most fiercely. Thus, his mission to destroy the poison sects becomes even more profound, and he will not rest until it is accomplished. Blood for blood. But that's not all, because the chain of command doesn't end there. When he is done with all the poison sects, he will go straight for the head of Baekhwacheol-geok. Meanwhile, in the Murin Association, at a branch of the Hogwang Castle, Mang continues his life as if nothing happened, working as an advisor in poison production. One day, Lejun decides to meet with him to inform him that his former poison sect has been wiped out in a single day. Although it's not really of interest to Lejun, he will have to investigate it. But he is surprised by Mang's strange reaction upon hearing this news. Instead of lamenting, Mang starts laughing frantically. Mang assures Lejun that it is the boy he had talked about so many times, Ya-Gang. Mang is certain that the only person capable of such a feat is that boy immune to poison. As they converse, we learn that some time ago, Mang fled the sect and took with him the secrets and spiritual medicines, thereby weakening the Jidok sect. Despite hearing all his words, Lejun doesn't believe that a boy could have exterminated an entire sect, no matter how weakened it was. But Mang insists on it and asks to be given the investigation, as he is sure it's Ya-Gang and he knows how he thinks. At the same time, Mang affirms that he will continue to attack, and slowly the other poison sects will fall, so they must do something quickly. Not attaching much importance to it, Lejun grants him the investigation but warns him not to forget his place, and to be more careful with what he says, no matter where he is. Mang happily accepts and leaves the room laughing loudly because finally the purpose of his life has been revitalized. As Mang makes his way towards his former sect, he remembers perfectly why he abandoned it. Ever since he learned that Ya-Gang was alive and trying to escape from there, he knew exactly how things would unfold in the future. Someone who, with an iron will, works for years to escape from there could only become a monster. While breaking rocks, he must have also trained his body, and hatred and thirst for revenge grew inside him. That's why, when he managed to escape the tunnel, because Mang was sure he would become an unstoppable beast, and the first place he would attack would be the Jidok poison faction. So his best option was to escape from there to avoid being present when that happened. And as planned, each stage of his plan unfolded accordingly. Therefore, now that he stands before the bodies and buildings of the settlement, which were destroyed by Ya-Gang himself, he is not surprised at all by the scene before his eyes. However, despite the ashes, Mang is certain that the boy must have left some trace. But when he bends down in front of one of the bodies to see if he finds something interesting, a blade is thrown at his back, grazing his neck. Fearlessly, Mang turns around and faces members of the Dark Sect, Samwol-ga, the Poison Sect, Yukno, and even the Iron Umbrella Sect, Nambi-do, who are watching him from the rooftops. In other words, the 3 major poison sects of Unnam have gathered in that place. After a tense initial moment in which some members insult Mang for his betrayal, the situation manages to calm down, and they all decide to collaborate in the investigation to find the culprit. The leaders of the 3 major poison sects begin to hypothesize that perhaps the attackers were forces opposing Lejun. But then they conclude that it wouldn't make sense because if that were the case, they would attack Lejun directly. Mang listens to them talk without contributing anything about his knowledge or Ya-Gang's identity. Then the others take him to the forest to show him what they had discovered so far, the body of the leader of the Jidok faction. The place where Ya-Gang had made the poison mixture was also there, but the other 3 didn't seem to have paid much attention to it. So Mang explains that the key to the murder was there. He carried out a medical technique of burning a small amount of cinnabar to treat boils, controlling the poisonous mist, known as mist discharge control. But by increasing the amount of burned cinnabar, it can become a deadly poisonous weapon. In addition to using that poison, he also burned verse tea leaves, so he must have prepared in advance to counteract the antidote. While the 3 members of the other poison sects are surprised by this new information and discuss among themselves how to proceed with the investigation, Mang gets lost in his thoughts. Seeing all that, he confirms one more thing. Everything is the work of Ya-Gang. He is the only person who could handle such a dangerous poison, and he also wanted them to experience the feeling of being exposed to the same poison he was exposed to for 8 years. Excited, Mang feels proud of how Ya-Gang has grown, and then he decides to separate from the other 3 to have some alone time to think that night, with the promise that they would meet in the forest the next day to continue investigating. After parting ways, Du goes to his sect members to inform them of the few advances they had made in the investigation. But when they start planning what to do in the coming days, 4 small bags are thrown into the place where they were gathered. Quickly, after hitting the ground, the bags begin to emit a purplish smoke, covering the entire area. Being from the poison sects, they understand that they are facing a powerful and toxic poison, so they try to cover their faces to avoid inhaling it. As they desperately flee from the attack, Du is surprised because it seems like the enemies knew they would be there and had been waiting for them all that time. Meanwhile, in the distance, Ya-Gang watches as all the poison sect members run desperately, trying to save their lives. The members of the poison sect cover their noses to avoid breathing in the poison, but unfortunately, that's not the only threat they have to face. Desperate due to the proximity to death and the lack of visibility, as they are surrounded by a violet smoke that doesn't allow them to see more than half a meter, the guards start launching attacks, thinking that it will help them defeat the enemy. However, they only end up harming each other. While the guards blindly attack, Du is trying to analyze the situation. Their enemy not only destroyed one poison sect but decided to stay in the place to destroy all the others. Not only that, but he proves to be someone who moves comfortably amidst the poisonous gas and has excellent night vision because darkness seems to be his ally. So, Du starts giving some instructions. He tells each survivor to shout their position and for everyone to learn the positions of the others to avoid attacking each other. However, after saying this, he observes a body approaching them and launching a wide attack. Although his companion tells him that he might hurt another ally, Du doesn't care because his attack consists of hundreds of fracture needles. If even one of them hits their enemies, their bones will dissolve, causing them extreme pain. He's willing to take the risk to attack, even if it's just one of them. As he approaches the place where he saw that shadow emerge, he notices that indeed, the enemy has taken the lives of some of his allies. But he has also struck a young enemy boy who is now impaled by one of the needles and writhing in pain on the ground. However, Du can't believe it's just him, so he plans to extract information from him, hoping he will betray his companions before taking his last breath. However, before he can fully process that thought, Ya-Gang rises from the ground and tries to attack him with a dagger. Fortunately for Du, he is quick enough to dodge it, but he's surprised that the young man is still moving after being struck by a needle. But that's not all. Immediately after, Ya-Gang uses the flying thread technique of the Secreto sect, 12 flying threads, and in a single attack, he returns the poison sect's needles, piercing them with their own weapons. Realizing this, Du tries to evade them, but at that moment, he realizes that his body is now immobilized. Trying to find an explanation, he comes to the idea that maybe in the few seconds he defended himself against Ya-Gang, he stopped defending himself against the poison, and in that brief moment, he accidentally inhaled enough poison for it to start affecting his body. Unable to dodge the enemy's attacks, Du is quickly struck by one of his own needles and falls to the ground. In disbelief that he could be defeated by a single young man, he asks Ya-Gang who he is. But Ya-Gang only responds that he belongs to the medicine sect, and although it's a long story, it doesn't make sense to discuss it there because old Du only has a few hours left to live. Meanwhile, in the Yakmun poison sect, the message arrives that the assassin sect has been attacking the Iron Umbrella sect. Although Yakmun doesn't believe that Du can be easily defeated, he still feels uneasy about the notification and orders everyone in his faction to break camp and gather everything they had prepared because they must leave there in the next few minutes, as a precaution. But before they can depart, Mang appears before their eyes, visibly agitated by this new information. Yakmun asks Mang why he has come there, as he doesn't trust the man who betrayed his own sect. And of course, he is not mistaken, as the words that come out of Mang's mouth are horrifying. He is there to make the entire Poison Valley sect die in that instant. Although at first, he can't believe it, Yakmun quickly realizes that it's something that Mang could perfectly do. So he becomes furious and declares that they will face each other at that moment, as he planned to take care of him later anyway to avenge the poison sect. However, Mang seems very calm as he speaks those words, stating that he wants them to die only for personal matters. Meanwhile, in Du's settlement, the Darkness faction arrives to see what has happened. Slowly, they begin to find survivors, but when they approach to help them out of the smoke cloud, they are attacked from a distance by the same fracture needles taken from the Iron Umbrella faction. Then, Samwol-ga, who is looking from afar on the rooftops, begins to understand how his enemy's mind works, leaving survivors alive as bait to later attack from a blind spot and cleverly using the enemy's weapons as well. However, as he comprehends the enemy's mindset, he realizes that they are not facing a true master because any real master would have fought head-on. not cowardly from a distance like their current enemy. Moreover, from his position, Sanwoo-ga managed to locate the spot from which Yakgang launches the attacks. Knowing his enemy's position, Sanwoo-ga runs towards the location where the shots are coming from and swiftly stabs his dagger near the attacker's heart, skillfully avoiding that vital organ to keep him alive and extract all the necessary information from him. However, when the smoke and the excitement of the moment dissipate a bit, he realizes that he has just stabbed the lifeless body of Du. Then, as he turns around, he sees Yakgang standing behind him, using Du's umbrella to make the attack. Without thinking for a second, Yakgang uses the umbrella and shoots a rain of needles, believing that he has finally defeated his enemy. But then, he realizes that Sanwoo-ga moved fast enough to dodge the attack and is now behind him, ready to end it all. Meanwhile, in the Poison Valley faction, the first martial artist who attacked Mang lost his arm due to Mang's swift attack, an attack that no one managed to see due to its speed. Seeing this, everyone is dumbfounded because no one even saw a movement from their opponent. But they are not willing to let him live, and they all attack at once. However, as had happened before, they all simultaneously start noticing that they have wounds and cuts on their faces and bodies. How could Mang have injured them all at the same time and with such speed that no one saw his movements? With the same swiftness, Mang positions himself in front of Yukno to end his life as well. Mang attacks Yukno, but he quickly dodges it, as expected from the leader of the 3 largest poison sects. Then, Mang comments that the reason he is attacking him has nothing to do with him personally, but it is for a greater goal. The only thing that matters to him is a single person. That person is the one who attacked the 2 poison sects that have been defeated so far, and they are moving much faster than Mang could imagine. That's why, at that moment, he sought to offer them a little help. Destroying 3 poison sects in a single night would be too exhausting, so Mang's plan is to personally destroy one of them to lessen the burden on Yakgang. Since the boy reappeared, Mang's life regained meaning. After leaving the poison sect, Mang lived as a beggar and a traitor, hated by the sect, until he reached where he is now. During that time, he yearned for revenge and prepared himself for the sweet moment when he could carry it out. The only motivation and driving force behind his tenacity was none other than his obsession with Yakgang. That's the reason why Mang is where he is now. That's why he doesn't just feel hatred towards the boy. He has developed many other feelings towards him of all kinds. That's why he wants to do him a little favor. While Mang delivered this long speech, Yukno had been preparing his ancient power all that time, a power capable of destroying a person in seconds, something that Mang already knew, and that's why he also knew how to dodge it. Yukno attacks Mang directly, but in a single movement, Mang manages to dodge the attack and effortlessly break his opponent's neck. Having done that, he continues on his planned path. Meanwhile, Yakgang and Sanwoo-ga continue their close combat. In one move, Sanwoo-ga manages to take the umbrella from our protagonist's hands and, using it, dodge the needle attacks. Additionally, he also succeeds in cutting Yakgang's hands with his dagger. Later, we will find out that the dagger was coated with poison, and Sanwoo-ga's plan was to defeat the boy with that single dose of poison. Clearly, he was not aware of our protagonist's particular nature. So, Sanwoo-ga's plan is to buy time until the poison takes effect on his opponent, and they engage in a close combat struggle. As minutes pass, Sanwoo-ga begins to notice an improvement in Yakgang's abilities, increasingly faster and more powerful movements, a power he was concealing. But then Yakgang tells him that he doesn't know martial arts and that the perceived improvement in his abilities was just a distorted perception from Sanwoo-ga's side. What really happened was that, at one point, our protagonist managed to make a small cut on the chief's cheek, introducing poison into his body at that instant. Similarly, the decision to engage in close combat was intentional, as it would allow the poison to spread much more quickly. Knowing that he doesn't have much time left, Sanwoo-ga launches a powerful attack on Yakgang, believing that if he targets the left arm, which should be immobilized by the poison, he could win. But he is clearly mistaken because at that moment, Yakgang stabs Sanwoo-ga in the heart with his left arm, proving that the poison doesn't affect his body. After this battle is over, Yakgang starts to feel a little tired and becomes aware of his limits, unsure whether he should confront the remaining sect that still stands. However, at that moment, he observes a bloody and menacing aura emerging from the Poison Valley settlement, making him realize that his body, under those conditions, is not ready to face such difficulty. After his great effort in eliminating 2 out of the 3 poison sects he had targeted, Yakgang decides to take a break to replenish his body. He remembers the words of his medicine companion while they were in the tunnel, who told him that once he exits the tunnel after all the training, his strength will not even compare to his past self. but he must always keep in mind that the strength he gains inside will only exist in his mind. Theory without practice is meaningless. Understanding the theory is one thing, but putting it into practice in the right situations is something completely different. That's why the best thing he can do is to be patient and know his own strength before facing any enemy. Although the boy did not understand what he meant at that time, now, after facing 2 sects in the same day, he perfectly understands what he was referring to. After training alone for 8 years, he only lacks battle experience, which is why he received more damage than necessary, unable to predict the enemy's movements. Furthermore, the martial arts techniques he can use are limited because his Kai flows have not yet stood out. So even though training alone has clearly served him well, now he must face more powerful enemies, and therefore, he must make sure to be better prepared when that moment comes. 4 days later, in Unnam Banryong, the headquarters of the Poison Valley sect, the news reaches Wijong, the 100th master of poison, that Captain Yakno and his tribe had been annihilated in the investigative mission. But that's not all, because along with their elimination, the Iron Umbrella sect and the Darkness sect have also been eliminated. Upon hearing this, Wijong begins to wonder what it could all mean and supposes that someone must hold a grudge against the Poison sect, although he can't think of who. With the gathering of all the Poison sects just around the corner, Wijong decides not to send anyone else to see the crime scene, but to go there himself. This news surprises everyone, including Mang, who can't believe that the sect leader is taking action because of it. Then, Mang appears before Wijong, who is not at all pleased to have him there, considering him a traitor, and tells him that he is not welcome. Mang then claims that Yakno told him the same thing, and upon hearing his name, Wijong becomes furious and starts spreading poison in the air, hoping to end him. But without even flinching, Mang spits out a thick green liquid and tells him that he is no longer the third-rate old man they believe he is. This surprises Wijong, who truly considered him very weak, so he admits that he has grown a lot in the last 8 years. But that doesn't mean he is welcome there. After asserting that he is not welcome in that place, Wijong is about to launch a second type of poison to try to stop Mang. But calm as ever, Mang assures him that he is not there to fight, but rather because he was the one who brought the news of Yakno's death. He then comments that the Jidok sect was part of the alliance, so he has been sent to investigate what happened. However, when Mang arrived at the location, the 3 poison sects sent to investigate were already eliminated. But not only that, innocent men and women from the surrounding city were also killed. They are facing a person thirsty for blood and revenge. Furthermore, Mang claims that the person responsible for these 3 sects is the same one behind the annihilation of the Jidok poison sect, as it seems they are not satisfied with just that sect and now they will go after every single poison sect. Upon hearing him speak, Wijong realizes that he is talking about a single particular enemy, and not a group or sect, which is what someone would think considering the power he possesses. Then Mang assures him that, yes, it is one person, an Asura, whom he managed to catch a glimpse of but fled out of fear instead of capturing him. However, he followed him with his gaze and understood where he was heading, towards the headquarters of the Iron Umbrella sect. That's why he is there with a proposition or a plan, which involves using the Iron Umbrella sect as bait while they gather all the sects in the area and activate the Heaven and Earth network. This is a strategy that utilizes overwhelming numbers to surround the enemy, leaving even the greatest masters with no means of escape. Although it has shown great effectiveness on other occasions, it is also known that in such a case, the enemy would naturally target the weakest part of the network, endangering a large number of ordinary soldiers. However, Wijong is not in favor of this plan because it would result in a great loss of soldiers just to eliminate one person. In response to this denial, Mang tries to impose his plan by claiming that he has a silver pass from the Alliance. But this is only taken as even more of an offense by Wijong, who shouts at them in front of everyone that they are not in the Alliance but in Unnam. Having said that, Mang withdraws and claims that the culprit is someone with a limp. Alone, Mang thinks that his plan has worked perfectly because by making Wijong angry, he hasn't realized his lie, and therefore the attention of the poison sects will now be focused on the Iron Umbrella sect instead of the Darkness sect. And the Darkness sect, which can attack from anywhere, will be too troublesome for Ya-Gang. But it's still best to target the Darkness sect to eliminate the possibility of any unexpected situations. Thus, Mang withdraws, thinking that he has helped too much by moving the pieces so that his next target is the Darkness sect. Meanwhile, the leader of the Poison Valley sect, Wijong, sends orders to all the poison sects, imposing that each sect select 20 skilled members to be sent to capture the assassin heading towards the Iron Umbrella sect, Another day, in the Unnam field, Ja-Kang observes from afar the work in the agricultural village, thinking that it looks like a normal farming village. But due to their perfect movements, it is obvious that they are people from the Darkness sect, and there are 30 of them working there, so it would be almost suicidal to rush in and confront them directly. So he wonders what he can do when he sees some bags and remembers what he has heard before. During their first harvest, farmers use the buckwheat they have grown to make buckwheat rice cakes to share among themselves. If only he could poison them through the rice cakes. But the reality is that during his last fight, Ja-Kang used up almost all of his mercury poison stored in his body. And he is also almost out of the poison he stole from the poison sect, so he absolutely needs to find a way to replenish his poison in order to carry out any plans. Then he finds a meadow surrounded by violet flowers called morning glory seeds, which have the effect of eliminating toxins from the body through excrement. However, if consumed in excess, it can also cause diarrhea and visual hallucinations. If it's severe enough, it can even lead to death. While a few seeds wouldn't be enough to cause death, Ja-Kang thinks that if he can consume them and extract pure poison from a large number of seeds, he could easily kill more than 30 people. With this thought in mind, he begins to eat dozens of violet flowers one after another. A few days later, indeed, a member of the poison sect goes to the river to wash the rice and start making the rice cakes, and he is attacked by a poison needle with Ja-Kang's saliva. When his comrades find out, they make an emergency announcement about what happened, and the group leader speculates that it may be the assassin who is targeting the poison sects. Therefore, except for a few who will stay behind to keep watch, most members will venture into the forest to search for the enemy. Although the leader thinks they have been given false information on purpose, as supposedly the assassin was heading towards the Iron Umbrella sect, he is satisfied that he has presented himself there because he wants to avenge Samuel Ga's death. As they search for him, Ja-Kang tries to use his last batch of poison to poison the well from which they draw all the water for the Darkness sect. But before he can unleash the entire batch, he is stopped by an enemy attack. As he raises his head, he realizes that he is surrounded by members of the Darkness sect, as he innocently fell into their trap. The group leader then comments that it was very clever of Ja-Kang to try to lead them to the forest to distract them and poison the water, but his limp gave him away. After this, the leader asks if he was the one who annihilated the poison sect, and Ja-Kang proudly affirms that it is all his fault. Then he asks if he also massacred the neighboring villagers, and Ja-Kang, confused, responds that he knows nothing about it, although it is clear that they don't believe him. Then Ja-Kang begins to wonder if there is something he didn't see before leaving. While they converse, Ja-Kang throws a poison needle at the leader, and in the distraction of the leader defending himself, he then releases a poisonous powder that obstructs the vision of everyone present. Moving through the smoke and using some of the techniques he memorized from the people in the tunnels, Ja-Kang begins to attack one by one the members of the Darkness sect. But at one point, he is attacked by the leader of the sect who throws him to the ground and renders him immobile with his attacks. Now that the boy can't do anything and will be unable to move for the next few hours, they can imprison him and then investigate him. After capturing the enemy, everyone relaxes and can calmly eat their rice cakes. But shortly after taking the first bites, they all start spitting blood because earlier Ja-Kang had poisoned a sack of rice flour and mixed it with the ones they already had in the place. Thus, all the rice cakes they prepared were poisoned with a large amount of poison. Seeing this, the leader asks how the boy can move, and Ja-Kang states that an acupuncture technique to close his movement chakras doesn't work on someone like him who never awakened those chakras. He explains that letting himself be captured and pretending to have been defeated was just part of his plan so that everyone would consume the rice cakes without worry. Before leaving, Ja-Kang assures that all of this is revenge for all the medicine sects that have been mistreated by the poison sect. And although the leader promises that he won't die from a mere poison, Ja-Kang sets fire to the building they are in before leaving. Despite that, the leader seems to make a great effort and is the only one who escapes from the cabin, promising, in the face of our protagonist, that when he recovers, he will kill him. And that's how the 5th part of this manhwa ends. If you have reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you have been one of the few people to make it here. So comment the word dragon in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.